All right, with Miles Prescott at the Pembroke Historical Society on Center Street. What's
The Pembroke, the address is 116 Center Street.
116
but
Center
we go
Street.
by the P.O. Box 122 is where our mail comes.
If you want to send donations
things,
or
exactly.
any historical items.
And so the Historical Society was formed in 1950, incorporated in 1952. This building here is 1848. That's from the Bryantville School that was moved here in the early 50s. The next building there was put there, donated in 1968, and that's the West Elm, what they called the Old Swamp Schoolhouse.
The back T?
They used to have to walk around, they called it around the swamp. They had to walk around the swamp to get to the building.
Really?
But the 8 school districts all had buildings of similar configuration. So this building could actually have been put on the center, the building that used to be here from the,
Now, I pass one all the time on Taylor Street.
that is the East Pembroke one. So
East
that was
Pembroke.
the 6th one. That went from 1847, I think, to 1921.
Historical Society
It's the only
owns that
one that's used. It's an active community center, whereas ours is a historic society. But
very small, right? I want to make sure we're talking about the same building.
yes, it's a very small. It serves people in East Pembroke.
Okay.
They had a cornhole tournament a few weeks back, so they have a good. It's a nice community, East Pembroke. There's a lot of close neighbors, and it actually. At one time, it was going to be a historic district.
Yeah.
It was considered, but there's a lot of red tape with those kind of things.
A little bit. A
So,
little bit. Okay.
so we'll head
Let's
in.
mosey on
head in the
inside and
building.
see what happens.
Yep.
Now, is this an old millstone here?
Yes. You got it on?
Yep.
This millstone. That's a good observation. This came from the Lafergie Mill, which was a mill that was down near the Herring Run.
Is that, did we mention that, you mentioned that name when we did the Quakers?
Yes, they're Quakers. Yes, they're a Quaker family. Now the mill, the Lafergies were in action in that mill in the 1860s.
Right.
The original mill went back to the 1730s. I think it was taken down in 1932. So it's called the Lafergie Mill, but it actually had other names before that.
Right.
But this stone was donated by a woman that, a 90-year-old woman that lived on 60 Allen Street, one of the old houses near the Herring Run.
Okay.
And it was in the front of her house, and she donated it to the Historical Society.
Very nice.
So good observation, sir.
Well, I was wondering what that hole in the middle was for. It looked like a beam went through there.
Unfortunately, we're not handicapped compliant.
Right. Well, let me shut this. You want to shut this door?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me get some lights on here. And I'm going to turn on the one behind you. Let's see. Oh, I think that's it. Okay. So let me take you. This is the second school that was added here. So this has, we have our meetings. We had one meeting, a Native American meeting here. Over 100 people were here. It was a standing room only. These here are our tools that were given over the years. The interesting thing about this tool collection is this was actually at the Boston Tea Party Museum for a while. We loaned these tools to them years back, and we didn't professionally. This is their quality work. And then
For mounting them?
later they had mounting them, and later they had a fire, and they were trying to get the building up and running, and they gave us back the tools. So we've got tools going back to a hatchet going back to 1780s. I think their interest in borrowing ours was because we had the beaver built here at Brick Hill, where the Boston Tea Party.
Well, yeah, it's a nice segue. I was just going to bring it up. Most people think of Pembroke. I think most people think I did Pembroke being landlocked, but there's a big. You've got the North River, and if you go down Brick Hill Road, a friend of mine lived there.
Right.
Across Scoosett.
Yep.
Down there on the right is
Right.
where the shipyard was.
Right.
And you
right.
got you have the river right there.
So back then, you know, you had 1,000 ships built on that river, and that would have been like 128 back in the day. All the mills, the noise. I mean, that would have been very bustling. And then, so people would have built closer to the, in some cases, to the water than to the actual road.
Right.
So that happens a lot. Also, the Native Americans, a lot of times they would use canoes, and that's how they would go everywhere. Like they could just go from the North River, you know, go off to Bridgewater or different areas.
Right, you get that family cemetery right up there on 53, the Briggs.
The Briggs Cemetery,
They were a big shipbuilding family.
There we have
town.
buried there. The Briggs were. So that cemetery has Ichabod Thomas, who built the beaver ship there. He lived across the street from the Briggs house in what was called the Collimore House. I have another boat I want to show you here that was noted for one of the longest serving ships. And this is actually on our town seal. This is the Maria, the ship the Maria. So it lasted for like 90 years, sailing. Sometimes they were whale ships. They got different purposes and repurposed. But for a ship to last that long under the conditions and things, now it's amazing. Only one ship survived. Whale ship survived of you're talking 1,000 here, and all these others just nobody maintained them. The one that survived is in Mystic Seaport now. Yeah. So I did want to show you something here, which is an interesting one here, because we're doing the presentations on the battles of how Pembroke was involved in the wars before the Revolutionary War. And we have one of these downstairs that I'll bring up, which is a square for measuring. It's actually broken off, but you notice the old number system, the old way they used to number, and the other one was 1750.
Well, I can't see it from where I am. Those are not inches?
Those are inches, but
Okay.
Just the style.
Oh, I see.
The style. The other one, I think, is a better example from 1750. I'll bring that up to show it to you. And we have more downstairs in the museum, and I'll show you a couple pieces as we move forward.
Now, you mentioned the beaver. Was the beaver that was built in Brick Hill?
Yes.
And the other one, the Dartmouth, Dartmouth was built in
There was a
New Bedford, Fall River?
sometimes those were built here, and then they were built for like Ichabod Thomas, that's buried in the Briggs Cemetery. He built some ships for folks in New Bedford.
Mm-hmm.
So he built for a lot for a Quaker named Roth. I think the last name was Roth, and he owned a lot of the ships that were built by Ichabod Thomas. So Ichabod Thomas is buried at Briggs, but also one of the earlier founders, Benjamin Turner. He was one of the first shipbuilders back in 1737.
Okay, what are we looking at now then, Miles?
Right here, we're going to go to this. Here is an aerial photo that was taken in the 50s. So this basically is Route 53, where it hits Barker Street.
Yeah.
So this is now the gas station. That was a Hojo's.
Which gas station is that?
The gas station near the corner of Route 14 and
Did you say Barker Street?
Barker Street. Barker Street goes off and
Okay.
53. 53 and Barker Street is right here.
And where would that fire station be?
There's the fire station.
That is
That's
the fire
North,
station.
That's the North Pembroke Fire Station.
Okay.
the Howard Johnsons,
Yeah.
which I think the last Howard Johnsons finally shut down.
Yeah.
This is the West Box Mill factory, which originally went back to the 1800s. It had a fire in 1937. One person, last name Magone, passed away. It was rebuilt.
Bunch of small businesses are in there now.
Yes, it was rebuilt in 1937, and they did a good job of keeping it in the front, looking like it did before.
Yeah.
We do know people that have the original West Box Mill signage, but look at all the
Is that lumber?
yeah, they would make boxes. They would make boxes for the cranberry shoes, other industries. But now this is all just overgrown forest. This house is no longer. Pleasant Street is probably about right here, but all this is no longer. Originally, there was a mill over here in 1690s. Robert Barker had a mill. There was a beaver dam up here, and there was a mill there. Now, if you go over there, you can't really see where it would have been. I mean,
I heard they're thinking of developing that area,
yes, that's a possibility.
like a big box store.
It's possible. It's possible. We're not sure. I mean, things will.
Things are in a state of flux.
It's a state of flux. The Historic Commission would have a say on the frontage of anything built
Right.
here. The other side is where the Turner House that we're restoring is
The one
probably
way in the back.
right about here.
Yeah.
That land is owned by the town now. So public safety would like to go in there. They have plans for, of course, that's going to cost more money and more taxes, all those things.
Town meeting will be busy.
But another nice thing here is this is what they call the Garrison House, the Barker House, Quaker House. Originally, now this picture was probably taken in the late 1880s. This woman is a historian. She used to, her last name is Percy. She came from the Whitman family. And she wrote a lot about Native Americans and such. And this is a Loring. The Lorings married into the Barkers.
Lorings are everywhere.
Yeah, Lorings are everywhere. But this house was believed to be from 1628. And so people thought it was the oldest house in America. In actuality, they found from the deeds, it was the more late 1640s. So they were 20.
Still pretty old.
They were 20 years off. And so we have a big collection of all these. A lot of things were taken off the building.
Where was this standing?
So this stood, if you're at the Herring Run,
Yeah.
if you're at the corner of High Street and where Center Street becomes Barker,
Yep.
that's where it was on that corner. And it was torn down in 1894, and a lot of towns came in and took parts off it. So it was well scavenged, and I will show you that now.
Okay.
The scavenger hunt. I hear the Hanover Historical Society president. Actually, I should probably move some stuff out of here so you can.
Not necessarily. We can figure this out.
All right.
We can figure this out.
Can you get through here?
Yep.
Steve O'Neill is the president of the Historical Society. He's also written some books. He wrote a book, Peregrine White was the first Mayflower baby born in Marshfield. And, well, actually, I think he was born on the boat, but
Right.
technically it was Marshfield. But anyway, he told me in Plymouth they have a huge collection of the Barker House. So here we have an old picture painted. I'm not even sure when it was, but this is what it looked like back in the day. You would have had, this is High Street, that's the house, and this is the water. Back then the waterways were much wider before they did a lot of
filled in for the roads.
Yeah, fitting it for the roads. So this is an exhibit. This is when the town was 200 years old. They had things of the Barker House. So these are the Barkers, Peleg and Hannah Barker, that were the last Quakers that lived in the Barker House in the 1850s.
Mm-hmm.
The funny story there is, I think they didn't get married till they were 40 because she waited 17 years till he stopped smoking tobacco before she'd marry him. So, but look, see here, we have this book here. That's where the rumor of the 1628 house started. Hannah Barker was at a meeting at the Garrison House, and she was reading about the family history, and she said her ancestors came up the North River through Robinson Creek to the Herring Run in 1628. Right here you have an old Barker House, I guess a cigarette thing from 1628.
Is that an ashtray?
That's an ashtray. An ashtray. And so...
Yeah, what's this little shingle?
These are shingles from the house. So
from that house we saw on the wall?
Yes. So some people did artwork with them.
Mm-hmm.
We have a door. This is an old pantry door from the house.
Interesting.
We've got all these keys.
Hinges.
And locks, hinges. So we had somebody that metal detected and donated things back in the 70s of the different houses. So you find a lot of the old British coins from the 1750s. But spoons.
That spade end of those hinges, seemed to be a artistic touch.
Now the interesting thing with this house, there were two parts of the house that were kept other than the knickknacks. Mm-hmm. One was a barn that was more later in the 1850s that was taken and moved to High Street, and it became the center. The barn became the centerpiece of the house, essentially. Yep. The other was their kitchen from the 1650s. It was a nice pine kitchen. That was taken by a family that was related to the Barkers and put in a museum up in on the North Shore. Mm-hmm. It has 7 different rooms, including the Pembroke Pines room.
What do you think that little grappling hook is for?
Oh.
Can you read that?
Well, actually, sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's a good question here. I can learn a little myself. King of England granted a family to build the Barker house in that says 1640, the winter before they lived in a dugout. This grapple found there near the Herring Run, near their dugout. So we would date this now around 1649, because the first deed wasn't. Miles Standish actually sold some of the property to the Barkers, but there was another gentleman who sold some property in 1649.
Miles Standish owned property in Pembroke? Well, Pembroke was part of Duxbury.
Pembroke was part of Duxbury, yes.
Right.
Duxborough. Actually, Duxborough went as far as even Bridgewater back in the day. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Oh, over here is our Native American collection. We last week we did a Council on Aging presentation. Al Giannatasio used to be a docent at the Robbins Museum. They have the second largest collection of Native American artifacts after the Peabody Essex Museum. And so these, what people would call these arrowheads, are actually called projectiles, because in North America, arrowheads didn't really exist. They didn't have the bow and arrow more than 500 years ago. So when you find a point on the beach, it's more than likely that it's older than 500 years. Some of these pieces here are 2,000 to 10,000 years old.
Really?
And a lot of them were found by the Fords that used to live where the post office up here is. That house was later moved, but they used to, when they were farming and digging, they found a lot of arrowheads and then donated these to the museum. So these projectiles can still be found to this day, if you know where to look.
Right.
These are old here, down here. These are old. You know, they'd be making. You know, those are pestles they would use for grinding and stuff.
Grinding
Those
the
go
maize.
way back. Yeah, you're amazed. I'm glad.
I know I said maize. You know.
I know. Let's see, what else can I show you? A lot of people are interested in the battle stuff.
Which battle is this? King Philip's?
These are a few different battles, and Pembroke had an excellent participation in the wars. One may have been because they had big fines. In some cases, they'd have a 16-pound fine, which back in the day might have been $1,600. But also, there was clearly a huge participation.
Fine if you didn't participate.
If you didn't participate, or you had to find somebody to take your place. Like if a Quaker didn't want to fight, he would have to.
They did that all the way up with the Civil War.
They did that.
They found a second. They call it a second replacement, anyways.
Replacement, right? But they use numbers. Sometimes they say a quarter person or a three-quarter. I don't know. We're still not sure exactly how they define that.
That's how qualified they were to.
But I was looking at the people that served. We kept good records. So a historian named Susan Smith kept good records of the Civil War and the Revolutionary musters. And when I looked at the 1790 census, it looked like about 80% of the males that could fight in those wars did fight in those wars. This here is a. We're gonna show this tonight. This is a canteen.
And what is it tonight you're putting on?
Tonight at the Council on Aging, it's Pembroke's role in battles before before the Revolution.
This is Wednesday.
So,
what's today?
today,
27th.
July 27th.
Okay.
All ages welcome. This canteen on the back, Gus Westerly donated this. He was one of the Historical Society founders, and on the back it says 1756. It says a Revolutionary War era canteen, so it could have served in both wars.
They just put a plug in there in the end, filled it with water and put a little stopper
on the
there.
back. It says, if you focus in on there, it's 1756. The initials are NB, so we're still trying to find out who NB is. B is a common last name in Pembroke.
Could have been a Briggs, right?
Yeah. This is an interesting thing. This is a this is a promise to pay for the soldiers back in 1779.
An IOU.
Yes. I think you've probably heard that sometimes they weren't always paid on time.
As long as the person that owed you the money was still around.
These are some interesting swords from the Revolution. This sword here, this yellow one here.
Yeah.
We had
Looks like a ivory handle, maybe. Or
yeah. Now the thing with this is,
horn
originally someone gave it to us, saying it was Benjamin Church. He fought in the King Philip's War and many wars back in the early days. But the Hanover Historical Society director looked at it, and he's an expert on some antiquities. He thinks it's a 1812 ceremonial sword. So the dates were, you got to be careful with history sometimes.
And what's that feather item there? What is
That is a good question. That was to, it looks like General Oldham plate plume?
Plume. Hat plume?
Yeah, it must have been a plume, like you'd put it on your head. Or if someone was hot.
I
You
guess.
need one?
It works.
There's some, this picture is the Mayflower Grove, which was one of a famous destination on the Bryanville side of part of Pembroke, which it was in operation from the early 1900s to 1940s.
Where exactly is that?
Where it would be is if you're at Little Sandy Pond
Yeah.
and you're going to the east, to the most east north point of that is where there's few structures left. It was badly damaged in the 1938 storms.
Mm.
And then cars, of course, replaced. A lot of people would come to the Mayflower Grove on train, and
Take the omnibus or whatever it was called.
but we have a ton of files on the back in the day, who acted there. There was a carousel. There was a carousel there from 1924 that was purchased by an Italian taxi driver. Saved all his money up, bought a carousel in Buffalo, New York, had it moved down here, ran the carousel. Then he later ran Mayflower Grove, and to this day, Buffalo has created the carousel with the nice colors, and they use some of our old photos as samples. But
And how they know to get in touch with you folks?
they knew where it came from originally. It was shipped to some place in Ohio, kept in storage for 50 years, and it was originally made in Buffalo, so it went back there, and so I haven't been to Buffalo to see it. I guess it's on the river. These are old drums from the 1800s, late 1800s, that the Hanover Historical Society borrowed those. They were, nice drums of the day.
What about the violin?
The violin, good question. That was made by Fred White back in around 1913, and he was an expert at violin making. There's
a local instrument maker?
local man. We had a lot of people who had multi-skilled. They made musical instruments, but they had other hobbies. I'll show you over here some interesting stuff that goes way back. These here are wedding slippers of Abigail Howland. She was a Quaker from 1772. So we've got pre-revolutionary wedding slippers that were later worn in 1899. So that's pretty cool. There's some other wedding slippers here. Some wedding slippers. Dorothy Fair she is a Quaker as well. She's related to the Lafergis. So that's a wedding slipper, 1781. Interesting, the Quakers aren't really the most material of religions, but they did well saving their things.
Right.
And I love the artwork here. This is
Hand painted.
hand painted.
Is that a Native American?
No,
Or is that a?
I don't see the provenance here.
No, I meant the subject of the painting, drawing.
It looks to be,
Yeah.
but yeah, I never. That's to be further researched. This here is a watch owned by Calvin Shepherd, the father of Susan Lafergie, and she gave it to Susan when she was 21 in 1852. She lived to be 100 years old, and that brings us back to when you filmed at the Quaker Meeting House. Remember the last of the Quakers? Can you tell me where that's from?
From the front of the carriage that she got carted around town when.
Kingston. It was Kingston's 200.
Oh, that's what it was.
1926. So
Right.
she was 95.
Well,
at the time.
if I knew it was going to be quizzed, I would have rewatched the video.
So you can edit that out, right?
No.
Right.
Well, I can, but I won't.
Let me show you some other things here. Okay, over here we have some Civil War items here. Diaries of William Bryant, Harrison Bryant, 1826 to 1894, donated by, these are
Those cigars?
journals.
No,
These
the
are
back.
journals. Oh, these look like,
Oh, it's wood.
It's wood.
Twigs.
Twigs. I don't know what. This bottle contains treatment of ivy poison made by John Martin, Apache Indian medicine man. That's interesting.
Bring it to an engineer.
Oh, I did want to show you something else which you were showing today at the Council on Aging.
Yeah.
I'll bring it over. It's another medicine, but it goes back to the 1750s. This is one of the resolves. I know you're familiar with the resolves, and this was one of the resolves men, Dr. Jeremiah Hall. He used to live in the oldest house in Pembroke, the King's Highway Inn. And in this, you can see this is morphine here. He's got other ones for upset stomachs. You need a magnifying glass to get the real gist, but it's the complete set. So he would have used these in the King Philip's War, where they went close to the Canadian border.
Right.
They were keeping the French away, fighting for
the English. This is a leather case.
Yep.
Very soft too, considering it's as old as it is.
Yeah. Yep. And so it could have been used. He worked in the Revolution too, so it could have been there as well. But that's an exciting thing. What else can I show you? Oh, I'd like to show you a few maps that are interesting for the town. This map, this is one of the maps we use a lot. So when we're doing research for people that inquire, we often use the maps to find out where somebody lived. In this case, this is on High Street. John Cox, his daughter, was one of the first teachers of Pembroke. So this would be close to where Mountain Avenue hits High Street.
Yeah.
Further up High Street was a guy named McLaughlin, which you can see in the 1857 map. And he was he headed the Underground Railroad in Pembroke on the south.
I think
shore.
I've seen this map on an old history of Pembroke online.
Yes.
An old book.
Yes. There is an old history of Pembroke book that was written. Well, Collimore wrote some things back in the 1880s.
There's Brick Kiln and where's Elm Street?
Elm Street. It would be over here. There's Washington. Here's Taylor. Taylor Street's here. Lavina Hatch, she was one of the suffragettes.
Yep.
Lived here. Elm Street comes through here. There used to be a hatch mill up here. Pleasant Street also had hatch mills. So they called this area Hatchville. But I think Hatchville name went away because it was easier to say it's East Pembroke.
Right.
It's like North Pembroke. East Pembroke took over the name.
Give it a geography
Hatchville.
name.
Yep. So Bryantville got to keep their name, but I'll show you some other maps here. Which
Was it named after the Bryant?
Yes.
Was it really?
All the Bryants. Yes. And Bryant actually, I think that was a Mayflower name. There were a lot of Bryants that owned land here in the early 1600s that sold land to the Barkers. So this is a map which I use a lot. It's a map of it's of that 1831 map, but then it takes Henry Litchfield, who wrote the Ancient Landmarks of Pembroke in 1910. It takes all his descriptions and notes and then identifies where the houses and what type of houses. So you have garrison houses, you have one-room houses, and where these are located and who live there. So in some cases, it could go back three families.
Right.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about in the 1750s. They recruited just less than a half a mile from here. where Allen Street is, there was a house that was an inn at the time, and they recruited soldiers for the King Philip's, not King Philip's, but the French Indian War, and some of those have Jeff Amherst's name on them, who is notorious for his he created smallpox among the Native Americans.
Did
They gave
he was a carrier?
they took the blankets and it was distributed.
Oh.
So that's why Amherst College had changed their mascot from Lord Jeffrey to Mammoth. So
Who knew?
I did want to bring up once you.
Okay, what's a square here?
So this is square. I showed you the square upstairs that was broken.
Yep,
It was broken in half.
yep.
This one actually we have a date on of 1750. So this one I'm going to show today at the because we're doing battles before the Revolutionary War. So 1750, this could have been used to build ships back in the 1750s.
Now,
And-
these numbers, they weren't
Look-
inscribed mechanically.
No,
Somebody
these
had
are-
to take a tool,
Somebody took them by tool, so
hand tooled.
they go up to 20. Look, they 22, and the 23 is backwards. It's 32, and
Yeah.
so that's very interesting.
Hmm.
But they could have used this for ships or any, how we use rulers today, pretty much,
Building a house.
or measuring the cornhole, the 27 feet requirement for the cornhole.
I just played last Thursday, and I didn't realize they were so far apart.
Oh yeah, we're having I think a lot of people end up just using what space they have. So
I tell you, my arthritis
we're-
was
we're-
kicking in.
we're having a tournament coming up. Let me show you one more thing down here. This is an old safe.
Yeah.
It says Morris Ireland Safe Company, Sudbury, Boston, Mass. This
Sudbury
was
Street. That's Sudbury Street.
Sudbury Street.
That's downtown by Government Center.
Government Center. In this safe, we found George Lewis was a famous photographer back in the early 1900s. He photographed everything.
Yeah.
We found his old slides in here. A
Really?
lot are postcards to this day. A lot of Pembroke postcards.
A lot of his photos went to.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Actually, I'll show you that upstairs as we
Let me,
wrap up.
See if I can.
Open it up.
No, I want to try to get the picture of this seal. Yeah. Eagle. Okay.
Let's see if I can open it up here. I don't have the. Okay.
And you guys have a combination.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything to it. We can go live again when I
Yep.
find it.
We're live now.
Looking for a ledger.
It looks like a closet of ledgers.
Yes, it has a lot of ledgers. There's a lot of ledgers here that go back to the 1800s.
Yeah.
There's one, and a funny story behind this is my friend Steve that's presenting was trying to figure out whose this was, and he goes, "Oh, the last name is Ledger."
Was that
Anyway.
was that a tongue-in-cheek comment?
Well, it actually happened, but some of this goes back to 1737,
Yeah.
and Seth Hatch, one of the founders of the Resolves, he fought in the battle of the. He had a ship on the in the French Indian War, and it helped stop stop goods to the French. It's got ledgers of what was owed
To whom?
to him. So he had
Now, this is his personal ledger of
this is his personal ledger.
monies that he was giving to people or companies or.
Companies or so what happened was he lived on Water Street. His house is it's an old red house kind of in the middle of Water Street on the post office side, and he had a general store, and so it's got ledgers here. Sometimes it goes back 5 years of what somebody paid. It's just everybody
Just like
Everybody collected.
Ebenezer Scrooge keeping track in his money house.
What I say is it's like people, if they kept their old registers from the banks,
Yeah.
from, going back 40 years, this is similar. Finding old Bibles with people's genealogy is a lot harder than finding ledgers. We're still finding. We were given a ledger last year, or earlier this year in Hingham, by a family that was related to Benjamin Lincoln, who served for Washington, and it was a Kilbourne Whitman.
Isn't that his? Is that his statue that's down in Hingham?
Yes.
Down off of North Street.
And he actually owned a house. He was a guardian for a house, and he and 5 of his siblings all married Cushings, and he married a Cushing woman from Pembroke. So we have a lot of. I probably mentioned this before. A lot of connections between towns, Hingham and Pembroke.
I just did a video of William Cushing, the Justice Cushing. He's buried up there in Situate. And his wife is in the Norwell Cemetery there. And
yep, I'm a Cushing by. This is actually my great uncle Stanton B. Cushing. It's an old.
Is it a signet?
It's a signet ring, so we'd use it for stamping stuff. So
really?
So I have the Stanton name, and so we kept the Cushings, although the name goes back to 1638 in America, but my family moved around a lot. But and let me show you one more thing with George Lewis, with the photographer. He created a lot that's now used for postcards. We have collections here at the Historical Society, old postcards of Pembroke. You can get packs of them. This picture is of the Gar building.
Yep.
So this would have been taken probably in the 1880s, 1890s. This is one of the stores in Bryanville. I think this is close to where the Bryanville corner. Old pictures of the ponds. The Historical Society has a lot of gifts here and things that are. We have some ornaments, Christmas ornaments, and.
Now, Miles, when's the next public event you folks are going to be having? That somebody can come down and.
So we're planning out our fall activities. We're going to have a few things in the fall. I can't give you specific dates yet, but we're going to have an old ghost story tales.
Up here, or is it on the
We're going to
cemetery?
have some at the Ada Hall House, which is on Barker Street.
Barker, right.
We're going to have some there. We always have, in December, we always have the Christmas tree lighting. We always have this open. Another thing we're going to do is have one of our buildings open once a month, like the first Saturday of each month, so people can come and tour the area and tour the facilities and find an open.
You have a Facebook page.
We have a Facebook page, Pembroke Historical Society.
Okay, they can find you. Be posting that information there.
Join us there.
Website.
Website is pembrokehistoricalsociety.org.
Okay. And you can always be reached by phone.
Email's better.
Email's better.
Yeah.
You can find that all online. All right. Miles Prescott of the Pembroke Historical Society.
Come on down. Love history rocks.
Thank you very much, Miles. Appreciate it.